Last year was a tough year for animated movies. Disney has suffered its lowest rated remake and a devastating box office bomb, while Pixar dished out two movies where one was hardly released to theaters, while the other was an absolute bore fest. With our two favorite animation studios suffering last year, there seemed to be no hope for entertainment on any platform for any audience. And I kinda thought that too. I thought things would get worse for services like Disney Plus or even Netflix. Until this movie came out. Guillermo Del Toro. This is a name that has become popular in the filming industry due to his unique style of storytelling. He's mostly gifted in the art of fantasy, where he makes the atmosphere both whimsical, yet dark and scary at the same time. You may know some of his works as the following: the Tales of Arcadia trilogy, Pacific Rim, Blade 2, Mimic, the Heckboy duology, I'm saying Heckboy Fight Me, The Shape of Water, and possibly the most famous of his movies, Pan's Labyrinth. Perhaps the reason he's gone down in history in this category is his unique monster designs that have left people scared to look into the water again. I mean, you know you've made a scary monster when you make a horror icon like Stephen King squirm in fear. And last year, an anticipated project of his was finally brought to Netflix. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, I give to you Pinocchio. Now, wait a minute. I know what some of you listeners are thinking. Which Pinocchio am I talking about? I do understand the confusion. Last year, the name Pinocchio was dragged through the mud twice. Once with Pauly Shore's Fruity Pinocchio, and then later on when Disney made another soulless remake of one of their most beloved works. But in December 8th of 2022, we got it. The Pinocchio remake to end all Pinocchio remakes. Released primarily to Netflix, Del Toro's Pinocchio offers a brand new take on the story that we've heard so many times. Instead, it goes for a more mature and realistic approach. Now I know what you're thinking. A movie with a living puppet being realistic? Yeah, that is a little strange, making a story about a live puppet in a realistic approach. But, Del Toro, you have made the impossible possible. This movie sets itself apart from previous adaptations of the classic story because it doesn't even try to be a rip-off of the classic Disney movie before Disney ripped itself off. And it differentiates itself from the Pauly Shore movie because it follows the source material near perfectly. And I mean near perfect, but more on that later. However, I'm not going to go into the plot completely, since YouTube would no doubt be breathing down my neck just by looking at this thumbnail. Plus, I won't be giving way too many spoilers plot-wise. Eat that, YouTube! Try copywriting my videos now. When I said that this story is more mature than all others, I mean that. The story itself has a little humor to it to set itself in a realistic atmosphere that you'd find in a story like this. It becomes clear that Del Toro wanted to throw this story's maturity at you in the first 10 minutes, where even the first sentence makes your heart break. We get the voice of the cricket explaining that Geppetto lost his son when he was just 10 years old. And hold the phone, PG rating, before you count the mere mention of death as a warrant for parental guidance. We get to see it. That's right, we get to see a 10-year-old child get Tadashi Hamada by being blown up by a bomb during World War I. In a church. Yeah, I think Zemeckis stole this idea from Del Toro since the movie was still in production by the time the remake was released. In the Disney remake, they established that Geppetto lost a son, and that was the reason he was making Pinocchio in the first place, to replace that empty feeling within his heart. But they don't go anywhere with it. They just mention it only once in the beginning, and it's never brought up again. Here, it's been 20 years since the death of his son, and he cuts down the tree planted in his honor in a drunken rage to make him again on his own. This is one of the things that this take on the story got right, but the Pinocchio remake does not. The remake was a prime example of tell, don't show, where it only mentioned the fact that Geppetto is emotionally broken by the loss of his son. But we never see the relationship they had before he died. Here, we see the bond Geppetto has with his son Carlo, how he taught him how to carve wood, how planting a pine cone could plant a pine tree, and even singing him a song that his late wife sung to him. And that makes the sudden death scene that tears father and son apart even more gut-wrenching. If you watch this scene and skip over watching the bonding scene between Geppetto and Carlo, you really won't feel anything but, what the heck did I just witness? But when you watch this scene, you'll walk out of the room, hug your mother and father, tell them you love them, and build a bomb shelter in the back of the house. It's also worth mentioning that there have been some changes in the book and previous adaptations. For example, there is no fox and cat to be seen here. In the Pauly Shore film, the cat is the most popular because of that scene where he shot Pauly Shore's Pinocchio. The fox and the cat, mainly the fox, was the best part of the Disney remake in my opinion, because of how over the top he was and because of his voice actor nailing the role. But here, they've been replaced by a circus owner named Count Volpe, voiced by Christoph Waltz. There's also a monkey that's his sidekick. And before you ask, it isn't some voice actor who makes animal sounds like Frank Welker voicing him. It's Cate Blanchett. Yeah, you know, the woman who voiced elegant characters like Galadriel from The Lord of the Rings or Hela from Thor Ragnarok? Not gonna lie, that is actually pretty funny. In the Del Toro movie, it's established that aside from Pinocchio, the wood sprite, and the talking cricket voiced by Obi-Wan Kenobi, the sense of magic and otherworldly elements from the original book is completely omitted. Gone are the days of enchanted islands that change kids into donkeys. This movie does something quite different. Yeah, in this movie, Pleasure Island is a soldier base. The coachman is replaced by an Italian general voiced by Ron Perlman. Imagine, Ron Perlman in a Del Toro project. Where have I seen that before? Like in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the PG rating truly does call for parents to watch with their kids because, oh my gosh, does this movie get mature. And what do I mean by mature, you ask? Man, you really didn't watch my Puss in Boots review, did you? For a while, people have said that nothing in Pinocchio media could match that traumatic scene where Lampwick turns into a donkey. But then Del Toro said, hold my beer, and started to raise the bar of censorship. Not only do you get a child being blown up by bombs, but you got people falling to their deaths on screen, and you even get the dogfish, the dogfish, you get the dogfish getting blown up from the inside.
Good lord.
There's another part that this movie executes better than the Disney remake. In the end of the movie, Geppetto states that he had held some expectations for Pinocchio to be a real boy like his deceased son. But we've never really seen that before the scene where Pinocchio begins his adventure. Here, we see the struggles that Geppetto has with the boundless personality of Pinocchio and the trouble he gets himself into with the townspeople. He even calls him a burden at one point, causing Pinocchio to truly set out on his journey. Now, this is one of the biggest strengths for this movie where the remake found weakness in it. It gives Pinocchio a real reason to try and become a better person. He knows the person he's supposed to represent in Geppetto's life and sees that he's been falling behind in that regard in the short time he's been alive. It's an emotional arc that makes the story feel more mature, and again, just makes it feel like an organic story instead of the standard fairy tale. Now there's also Geppetto. Now some may say that he was a little unlikable when he rejected Pinocchio at first, but Those kinds of people only live by the Disney movie where Geppetto immediately warmed up to him. But again, that's one of the movie's biggest strengths. You all have to remember that this Geppetto lost his son and sees Pinocchio as a mere reflection of him, but only sees the negatives. And let's not forget how he came to build Pinocchio in the first place. Unlike past interpretations, this Geppetto didn't build Pinocchio just because he's a random woodcarver. He was in a drunken, grieving state. Even after 20 years, he finally tries to release all his anger and sorrow and builds a puppet in his dead son's likeness. Anyways, all this time, I haven't even said anything about the stop motion. Del Toro's touch on the animation is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely fitting to the setting of the story that they're trying to tell. The animation in the Pauly Shore adaptation is lackluster, but not entirely awful. The animation in the Disney remake is fine on the Fox and the Cat. Jiminy Cricket is one of the oddest models in the film, but the absolute worst thing I've seen in the film is Pinocchio's eyes. Oh gosh, those eyes. But the models used in Del Toro's film are unique and stylized. They look a lot more human-like without any cartoon features to them. It really sets them as far apart from previous adaptations as possible. This movie deserves its spot as an Academy Award nominee. From the creative changes, voice acting, and cinematography, to the amazing designs. This movie is absolutely beautiful. But yeah, that's the review I have for this movie. Not an entire review on the whole thing, but that's just because I don't want to be called out by YouTube. I also don't want to give away any spoilers for the plot, as I want to leave it up to you to see it. This movie is an easy 9.5 out of 10. That's all for this review. Remember to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.